You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
Detroit City of Champions, the podcast. We are diving deep into the 1935 season and all the things around it. The Lions, the Tigers, the Red Wings, 30 other championships, a trilogy of books written by an incredible guy.
Oh, that's awful nice of you to say. Charles Avison.
Charles, I'm Jamie Flanagan, and we're just going to have some fun. Charles, I got to tell you, Matt Fox is over there running the board.
I'm pushing buttons.
And the highlight of my week used to be Tuesdays and having some bourbon with Matt on our show, The Man Cave Happy Hour.
I've been replaced.
Now I have two highlights.
Nice.
Now I have two highlights of my week. Because Matt's still here. He's like a bad hangnail.
He's still
he won't
drinking
go away.
some bourbon, too.
But yeah, no. So it's I really look forward to this.
Yeah, me too. I love it.
You're a great. You've collected an amazing collection of stories, to be super redundant, and I'm enjoying unfolding because I know nothing about sports, and because once or twice you kind of like scolded me a little bit and you're like, oh, did that sound harsh? And I'm like, no, because I'm saying dumb stuff because I don't know what I'm talking about. So I appreciate
last
the
week
lessons.
I do. I felt sometimes I can get intense. That's one of the things where I can definitely. But people that know me anyway, that's watching the show that knows me.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll go. I'll there'll be something that I'll get. I guess you say like triggered.
But you're passionate.
Like, yeah. There's now heaven or hell get a hold of me back from making that point or whatever.
You stepped on that crack there. So, but so we're gonna keep our eye on the chat room. So if anybody is joining us live on Facebook, because we throw this up live on Facebook, feel free to comment, make a comment.
Yeah, comment during the show. We'll say hi and everything.
And then and afterwards we try to go back and watch that people comment on the videos as they go up on YouTube and up on the social medias. So we appreciate you listening, taking the time, giving us a listen. If you're listening it somewhere, watching it on YouTube, do us a favor, hit the subscribe button.
Yeah, comments, likes, everything. If you like the show, it really helps to comment and share and send the link to friends or whatever, and just everything like helps because like I say, we're trying to bring back this this forgotten story that is the whole thing. The overall show is about the story itself, but there's. As we've shown, I mean, we're on episode 13 right now,
right?
And we haven't even dented it. I mean, we haven't even put a dent in this thing. And it's and I've actually been trying to summarize each of these components. We've been trying to, we've kind of rushed through a little bit of it because we could have done 20 or 30 episodes on just the Tigers, just their seasons.
And we will. We can go back.
Yeah, we will. Sure.
I mean, we're not going to run out of stuff.
Yeah,
so,
no. That's what I'm saying. It's almost. I mean, it literally is endless. I mean, there's. And you can just see from a lot of these stories that it goes so deep with the different people. Like each of these people have stories. Each of the teams has stories, and there's just so much to really dive into. And I mean, as we're talking about with Potsy Clark today, this is episode 3 of Potsy Clark, the coach of the Lions.
Yeah.
I mean,
and we haven't even gotten to Detroit yet.
And there's one. We haven't even gotten to the Detroit. And we're not even going to be finished with Potsy this week. We're going to be doing one more episode at least on him, because he's just such an important figure. And so, but yeah, I'm just really excited because, the way I've been presenting the story for the longest time has been. Just like when I do art shows, or I've done a lot of library talks, or we do a presentation every year at the Detroit Historical Museum on April 18th for Champions Day. Yeah, and so I do a lot of stuff like that, and a lot of times it's like, maybe a half hour, maybe an hour. Sometimes I talk, but it's usually just there's, as you can see, there's so much information. It's always got to be condensed, and whether it's a 2-minute pitch to sell a book or a 20-minute thing for a quick slot for some kind of a series of, sports talks or whatever. But it's always got to be something that I've got to condense everything in such a small amount of time. And so that's why, I love this show, because it really is a chance to explore all kinds of different stuff, and there's so much to explore.
And that's what we want to do. But because you said we kind of rushed through the Tigers a little bit, and I look forward to revisiting some of those stories, and just kind of rolling around, on a holiday or an anniversary,
sure,
so a landmark date in the on the calendar for the Tigers.
We're going to go back and revisit
we
the
have
players.
Guests in.
We want to go back and revisit the players. We're going to do a much deeper dive into each of the players at some point.
And so I'm just
and then and just to let you know, today is actually the 100th anniversary of the founding of the NFL. Today.
Oh,
1920. Yep.
Oh,
today
see, there's a more
anniversary.
important day.
So that's a highly appropriate topic. See, we're talking about
101 years?
1920. So
100.
Yeah,
it's 100?
I saw some on the NFL.com today where it popped up saying it was the 100th anniversary, and it was because I knew it's 1920 is when the NFL was founded.
Okay.
Yeah, so today actually is.
So as of our recording day here in September 17th.
17th, yeah.
Constitution Day, halfway to St. Patrick's.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. That's how you measure your calendar based on how far away you are from St. Patrick's.
I was going to tell you, it's an important day for me.
Yeah,
I'm halfway to St. Patrick's. We didn't get St. Patrick's this year. I am so pissed off.
Yeah.
No, I don't go out on St. Patrick's
But everything
Day.
is for you is measured around St. Patrick's Day. Like St. Patrick's Day plus 35.
Yeah.
St. Patrick's Day minus 82. It's all based on your calendar is like completely timeline for
it's very
St.
green.
Patrick's. Yeah.
It's very green.
Yeah.
Stuart says, "Hey, it's glad to hear the big man chatting
Big
about
Stu.
his passions."
Big Stu, what's his last name? Dugan?
Big
Stu. I worked with him up on Mackinac Island. One of my great friends. Yeah.
I was actually on your website, DetroitCityChampions.com. Right. There's a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
The previous podcasts, the shows that you guys have had, to go back to the beginning of, this adventure that you guys are on.
Yeah.
I'm actually starting at 1. I've been sitting here for every single one of them, but I find myself going back to episode 1 and relearning because there's just so much information that you guys are sharing.
I know it really is. There's so much, and like I said, we have the first. I think the first few episodes we did go a little bit of warp speed through some of the stuff, but we will come back for.
We're just
for
getting
a lot
our
of
feel
it.
too.
Yeah,
we don't know what
we're
doing.
going to take our time and go through it, and there's so many different branches off that we can take too, like talk about these other teams, the Chicago Bears of the three. I mean, all this different stuff. Like we're going to mention this guy's name's Cliff Battles for the Boston Redskins. Now it was the Washington Redskins, but back then it was the Boston, and his name's going to come up. But there's guys like Cliff Battles that nobody's ever heard of, and like listen to his name, Cliff Battles.
Yeah,
that's
and
that's
not a.
And he was like the greatest. He was like a tremendous running back, like a power speed runner, like just awesome. And like his name is Battles, and nobody's ever heard of him, And it's there's so many different like off topics that we can do offshoot. But that's what I like about the screenplay for the movie too.
Yeah,
is that. I wrote the screenplay for the movie as like a Netflix 9-part miniseries, and there's so many like I wrote it so that to introduce all these different, or not all, but a ton of different characters that the Lions and the Tigers and everybody had to face towards the idea of potentially imagine an entire series where like the first season is the City of Champions story, and then you meet all these different characters: Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig. Bronco Nagurski, and all these different, like the Green Bay Packers of this time. And then you start doing offshoot episodes, maybe a one-off episode, maybe a 3-part episode, whatever it is, and you focus on all these just various topics from sports history. I just think it would be like the coolest show, like a period piece, like all set in that time. Because those are some of the most, some of the biggest sports movies ever.
Yeah.
Are the ones that like conjure nostalgia. That like look back and like this was.
We're gonna get to it. The Cinderella story.
Yeah, the Cinderella story is another thing that happened in 1935. It's like $100 million Hollywood movie.
Yep.
That's just one thing. Like imagine an entire series, and that's what that's what I'm saying. Like there's so much different stuff.
So we're here. We were with the Spartans in Portsmouth, and they're taking names and kicking some butt.
Yeah.
33.
So 31 Potsy takes over the Spartans, and they brings in 19 new guys.
Yeah.
And so he completely cuts with 30 guys off the roster.
Right.
It's like the big. I've never heard of a team.
And then
that
reduce
cut 30 guys.
the roster,
reduce
down
the overall
to 26
size down to
or
20,
something like that.
26, 27, and then brought in 19 new players. And then it was 9 guys ended up was with the team in 1934 when they became the Lions. And then it was another, I think it was 5. I got to look it back up, but I think it was 5 that was with them in 1935 when they won the championship. So that was a major overhaul in 1931 when he first takes over, his first head coaching job as a professional, and he completely guts this team, completely revamps it, and then hits on all these stars that became literally like the central components of these teams, for the next, however many years.
So the Tigers win the pennant in 1934.
Yeah, but that's a little bit ahead of where we're starting out with this story.
Okay, all right. So I didn't know if that was all right. So we're still before that.
Exactly.
All right. So where are we coming in?
1931, Potsy takes over the Spartans, and immediately the team becomes awesome.
Yeah.
And so then 32, we talked about on last week's show, they were in the first NFL championship game.
That's played in a hockey arena.
They played in a hockey arena.
Is that the Portsmouth Spartans?
Portsmouth Spartans, yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so they're in Portsmouth. And Portsmouth was like, early NFL history was a lot of smaller, it was really a lot of like Ohio, Midwestern type, like Massillon and all these different towns in Ohio. And also like, your small towns like Green Bay. It wasn't like nowadays, it's like all big cities,
right.
New York and Boston, all this. But back then, like, football, it was like a lot of smaller towns, and Green Bay is a residual of that. They're like the last city that was from that era of like smaller towns that, but they were just so successful. They really built up a cult following there. And it's crazy because if you actually look at like the populations of NFL cities, like you look at the list, it's like 7 million, like it's like their population. I don't even know what it is in Green Bay. It's like, I think it's like 8,000 or something like really small. But every other city in the list is like 7 million, 6 million, 3, 5. And then Green Bay is like 6,000. And then they have but then you look at the crazy thing is their attendance per game. It's like been sold out for like every game.
All 800,000 of those people are at the stadium.
Yeah, but everybody from everywhere around comes to that game, and they sell out. They've had a sellout every year for like I think since the '60s, and like they season tickets are impossible to come. Anyways, 1931, Potsy takes over the Spartans. And they become awesome. And then 1932, the Spartans go to the NFL championship, that first NFL championship game, which leads to massive changes in the NFL because the NFL splits into two halves so that they can have a championship game every year.
Money.
Exactly. And so that was, so it had like a World Series of football, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's the NFL championship. And then numerous new rules come into play as a result of that. We're not going to go through all of them. You can just look back at the last episode if you want to see all the different rule changes that came out of it. But it was a significant thing to happen.
Yeah.
And then in 1933, the Spartans were good, but the problem is that their best player, Dutch Clark, and again, Dutch Clark was the elite of the elite in the NFL. I mean, he was one of the main guys that Potsy discovered in 1931. And Dutch Clark was like, I mean, he was like, whereas Bronco Nagurski was like, sort of like a Shaquille O'Neal of the football at that time. Like he was just in like unstoppable power. Like you could not tackle him one-on-one. He was just overwhelmingly powerful type of a player. But Dutch was like incredibly fast, shifty, smart. He was he was like they equated him to like kind of like a Napoleon on the field, like just an absolute, just a brilliant field general. Just incredibly smart on the field. Like Dutch was elite. In he wasn't powerful at all, but again, in every other way, he was an elite player.
Right.
And so he was the core player on the Spartans, and with numerous other great players, of course. But what happened is that at the end of 1932, Dutch got this job to go be a coach at Colorado College. And then when they went to the NFL championship game, which again was like an impromptu game, then the college wouldn't release him from his contract, and so he couldn't make it back. So the Spartans got beat. And then the following year, 1933, he did not come back for the season. Dutch was not there with the Spartans.
Okay.
And so without Dutch, the team basically dropped. They still finished in second place, which was they were very competitive. In fact, their Glenn Presnell, who was you could call him really their second best player. Glenn Presnell became their number one guy and led the league in scoring. Was like he did what he could. And the Spartans finished in second place. But anyways. 1933 is really the death knell of the Portsmouth Spartans because the city, it's again one of these smaller towns, and the Great Depression had absolutely ravaged the city so badly that again, they were basically exchanging shares of stock to players, not even exchanging, giving shares of stock in lieu of payment to these players. And shares of stock might be nice for the future, but you can't eat shares of stock. So that's where they're, you can't use shares of stock to pay your bills.
You can try, but it's not
try,
gonna work.
You can put them in your shoe to
when
you wear a
I'll
hole
trade
in
you
your
the
shoe.
share of stock for my rent payment.
No, I'm really 6'2".
Yeah. So it doesn't work in that regard. So anyways, at the I have a quote in the book that talks about this, and I wrote this whole scene in the movie. This scene in the movie really is the introduction to the Lions in the screenplay, or in this movie. Is that the team was about to completely fall apart. Like, they were like, we're not making any money.
Yeah.
We're potentially going to get mangled on the field. We're not getting paid for potentially getting mangled.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys are great. They could go to other teams. Potentially.
Yeah.
And so Potsy. This is where really we label this episode the genius of George Clark, because Potsy keeps this group together. I mean, he had instilled such, like, they call it an esprit de corps, where it's like these players are, they feel like, if I'm not going to play for Potsy, and if I'm not going to play with these guys that I consider my brothers, then I'm not even going to play. Like, it's just not, it was fun while it lasted, but if I'm not playing with these guys, then I'm not playing anywhere. So that was the first thing. But the second thing was that he was able to not only create that, but also to keep them from just completely saying, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm not playing for anybody else, but I'm also not playing for you because I'm not getting paid. You know what I'm saying? So, like, he was able to say, I know you're not getting paid. I know this sucks or whatever, but we signed on to play this. These fans are counting on you. What fans we do have are, counting on us. And so, we get, we can't just abandon our organization. You know what I mean? Let's go out, with, like, winning some games and stuff. And so they did. And he kept this team together. They played the entire season. Wow. Like, the last few games, they didn't even get paid. And so, nonetheless, the writing is on the wall that this is it for the Portsmouth Spartans. Mm-hmm. And now comes 1934. And this is where we really want to go with this episode today, is focus on 1934. Okay.
And 34 is when we make
the Tigers.
We make the move.
Mickey Cochran comes to Detroit.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, things start to pop off in Detroit with the Tigers, and of course, baseball season comes before the
boys
NFL.
Of summer there.
Exactly. So summer is rocking in Detroit, and the Detroit, where Detroit at the end of 1933 was this, like, Great Depression ravaged area. The Tigers are terrible. There's really no sports to get into. Mm-hmm. Really, it's just Garwood is the only big sports name. The Tigers are absolutely dreadful. But in 1934, everything changes. The Tigers are awesome. They're coming out of the gate with Mickey Cochran. They got all this swagger. And then so there's radio. The WJR radio owner, George Richards, sees this. Sees this, great thing, the Tigers going crazy. And then at some point, I wrote it in the screenplay where he basically, I can't attest to the veracity of this, but the idea was that he sees that the Portsmouth Spartans, this great team, mm-hmm. are folding.
Oh,
and so that's a great team that's folding. And he gets this idea. What if we transplant this team to Detroit, and they're competitive on the field, just like the Tigers are, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe this is because the NFL had failed at least 3 times prior to this. Sometimes you see the number 4 but it's like a franchise that was like the same franchise, whatever. But they failed at least 3 times prior to this to establish an NFL team in Detroit. And so here we are, like and these are the times that they failed was in the Roaring 20s. And so here we are in the Great Depression, and here's an opportunity. They're looking at it going, well, if we can bring this great team here, but if we can associate them with the Tigers, then we might be onto something. We might be able to establish an NFL team. And I got a radio station that we can use to broadcast the games. Yeah. And that was the genesis. And so the Lions, did you put that? Do you have that photo? The one with the lion jumping over through the hoop. Yeah, there we go. That is the newspaper. If anybody can see it,
okay.
If somebody's listening to it, what we have on the screen is a newspaper from the Detroit Times, where it's a cartoon picture of a lion jumping over a
alley-oop?
Yeah, he's jumping over a goalpost, and George Richards, it's a cartoon picture of George Richards holding up a plate showing this New York Giants first game versus Lions on September 23rd. But anyways, and so I also, it's too small to even read if you can see it on the screen. So I'm going to read the quote that is up on top of the article so you can get a sort of a better idea. So here is.
So George Richards was who again?
He's the owner of the WJR radio.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. That's funny. I was on a call earlier today.
Right.
With because I work at the local pop station here in Detroit, 96.3 WDVD. We're owned by Cumulus, and our sister station WJR, upstairs. And so I was on it was like Mitch Albom and Paul W. Smith and Frank Beckman.
Well, I'm saying, like,
we were all like in a big Zoom today. But Mitch Albom, he looks like Al Pacino now.
Oh yeah,
I'm like Mitch, go hooah!
Yeah. He's not kidding.
I didn't say it. Paul W. Smith actually said you look like you have a porn mustache. And I'm like, oh my god, you didn't.
Oh my god,
he did.
That's fantastic.
Well, as I'm saying, a lot of these. It's interesting because a lot of these things that exist today.
Yeah.
They have some of their.
It's
Genesis,
a heritage station.
All this stuff. Like the movie we showed, that Play Ball. That stuff dates. You got Fisher Body Company is putting out the first MLB movie with sound. All these different things. There's connections with the past that are. It's more than a lot of this story is the roots of these institutions that are in Detroit to this day. But so anyway, so here's the quote. This article came out July 22nd, 1934. Mm-hmm. At this exact moment, the Tigers were 2 games. The Tigers had a 2-game. They were in first place, and they had a 2-game lead over the New York Yankees. They were in first place. So this is the exact moment. So this is the article that came out. This is a little bit the first like paragraph. So you can see, if you can't see the article, it says pro grid team here is named the Detroit Lions. So this is the article that introduces the arrival of the Detroit Lions. In the very first few words by Burt Walker for the Detroit Sunday Times. So, inspired by the spirited fight the Detroit Tigers are making for the American League Baseball Championship, sponsors of the Detroit professional football team have decided to call their entry to the National Football League the Detroit Lions. They would call this team the Tigers, perhaps, but that might create confusion. The Lion is the monarch of the jungle, said Cy Houston, vice president and general manager of the team, and we hope to be monarch of the league. It is our ambition to make the Lion as famous as the Detroit Ball Club has made the Tiger. So there can be absolutely no doubt, based on this quote, that the name Detroit Lions was based on the idea of the Tigers in 1934. There can be no debate.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying. Like the Lions' arrival of the city, they're associating with this Detroit Tiger franchise. Like, why would you not?
Yeah. Co-opt it.
Yeah. And so, but this is what it's worth mentioning about this article. So if there was a new NFL team coming to a city in today's day and age, like just pick a city that doesn't have a team currently. What I don't even know. Anyways, imagine if a city
Cleveland.
Well, you could trust me. Cleveland people will say the same thing back to Detroit. So let's not even go there. Let's not even go there. But like I say, But anyways, pick it. So imagine a city doesn't have a football team currently, and an NFL team is coming to the city.
Right.
Okay. How big a news would that be?
That's huge.
Biggest thing there is, right? It'd be wall-to-wall coverage.
Yeah.
This article comes out on page 12. Okay. So this article, you can actually see it on the top of the article, page 12. They're announcing an NFL team coming to Detroit. That's the level that the NFL was back in this time.
Okay.
It was, especially like something with the Tigers going so insane. The Tigers, the first 11 pages were probably Detroit Tigers related. Okay. And then they just found a coverage. But this is going to be a recurring theme with this Lions Club, where they came in the city, hoping to latch on to the, like you say, for lack of a better concept, the coattails of the Tigers.
Sure.
And they found a much ruder awakening, which was that the team was going to be associated with the Tigers by name. They're hoping to associate by deed, and then their best player, Dutch Clark, who they lured out of retirement for 1934, was billed as the Ty Cobb of football. And we actually have show up that other picture with the sports stamps.
Sports stamps.
Yeah,
there it is.
Stamps. The 2 pictures next there.
There you go.
So that you see the sports stamps right there, where it's got Dutch Clark and Ty Cobb, and this sports stamp was 1936. But you can see how the consistency there was the idea was there's a new Ty Cobb in Detroit, but he doesn't play baseball. You got to come watch a Lions game to see this new the new Ty Cobb, the Ty Cobb of football.
Yeah.
And so that's the idea, is trying to associate. But the problem was, again, is that the Tigers were so wildly successful that the Lions had to rise up to incredible heights just to get past page
Just
12.
not to
you
be
know?
eclipsed. Yeah.
Just to even get on it, just to even get in the same newspaper as the Tigers. That became a recurring problem for them. Is that the bar of expectation because of the Tigers was raised so high that this was a very talented team. They were fully capable of doing it. But it put, that's what I'm saying. Like this, like a lot of times a team comes into a city and they're like, gee whiz, I hope we do well this year. Let's put on a good show for the new fans, guys. Yeah. But no, this was like if they did not play well, if they did not compete for the for an NFL championship, then nobody cares.
Right.
This is the city. This is becoming the city of champions. And you're either a champion and you're, page 3 behind the Tigers, or you're not, and you're not even in the newspaper.
Oh man.
So anyway, so that's the stage that is set. Yeah. And so anyway, so the Lions come in 1934. And immediately they talk about they had lured Dutch Clark out of retirement.
I was going to say, did we get Dutch Clark back?
We got Dutch Clark back in the George Richards in this ownership syndicate. They spend $15,000. That's it for the Lions, and they pay all the back salaries of all the players in that.
Nice. Well, that's good.
But so at $15,000, like Mickey Cochran was purchased for $100,000. So they got the whole team for $15,000.
Wow.
That's what's crazy. Is like it just shows you the difference. Like. I mean, just one player in baseball, granted the Hall of Fame player, versus $15,000 for this awesome
whole
franchise.
Team, yeah.
So anyway, so they bring him in. They lure Dutch Clark out of retirement. They make him one of the highest paid players in the NFL, which lures goes a long way towards obviously luring him out of retirement. And another thing that they do is hold on a second, I gotta do this. And this was I just gotta make sure I get the right name here. Hold on a second. Another thing that they do, which is hold on one second.
So Dutch
areas right here. Okay, so another thing they do is and this is what's even I think as fascinating as anything that's sort of coming forward is that they also get a player named Chuck Bernard from the University of Michigan. Okay, Chuck Bernard. I don't even have my notes written down prepared for him, but Chuck Bernard is one of the most dominating college football players of all time.
Okay,
Chuck Bernard is awesome, and like he led the University of Michigan. Like I think it was 2 undefeated seasons. I wish I had my notes in front of me to nail it down. But it's like look up Chuck Bernard. His statistics are ridiculous at the University of Michigan. He's easily one of the most decorated college football players of all time.
Okay, and
Chuck Bernard, so he signs with the Lions.
Yeah.
So like this is like basically like a number. They didn't have the draft back then, but to get Chuck Bernard, he's a center. He plays center and middle line, and basically when on the flip side, nose tackle, middle linebacker on defense. And so because he basically just flip around on from your offensive position to the defense. But anyways, getting Chuck Bernard was just like a coup. Like it was like so big. This is like a number 1 overall draft pick type of thing.
Okay.
So to get him was just huge because he could have signed with any team, but he stayed local. He signed with the Lions. So you got this guy from U of M that wins a couple national championships. Even Gerald Ford played with Chuck Bernard, and they asked him like, who was the best guy? He was like, Chuck Bernard was like the greatest player I've ever seen, like still to this day. So anyways, the Lions get him to anchor this, because players would substitute. And so they had already had an all-world center in Claire Randolph, and now they've got Chuck Bernard, who was rumored to be, and at this time, they would have a college all-star versus NFL championship game. So whoever won the NFL championship would play in a game in Chicago against the college all-star squad. So imagine how cool that would be today. Imagine an NFL champion, like, an NFL champion comes in, like the Chiefs, for instance, would play a squad of college all-stars, this upcoming season, because the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl. Yeah. Then they would face off against the college all-stars. And the college all-stars would always give a good account of themselves. They were good. But anyways, Chuck Bernard had played on this college all-star team, and he played against Bronco Nagurski because the Bears had won the previous championship, and he was sticking Bronco Nagurski by himself.
Nice,
which we've already talked about.
He was a monster.
He would use you could not attempt to tackle him one-on-one, but Chuck Bernard is out there sticking Bronco Nagurski. That's when they're like, we got to get this guy because the Bears have been such a handful for the Lions or for the Portsmouth Spartans, and they sign him. So anyways, you got Dutch back. You got Chuck Bernard coming off of University of Michigan. You know what I mean? There's excitement for those that are actually following the NFL, which is, granted smaller than it is today, much smaller.
Yeah.
But the optimism for this team, was like, dude, they're going to be good. They're going to be real good. And in fact, they were very good. In fact, they were so good. They went unscored upon in the first 7 games of the season.
Holy crap.
They won their first 10 and they were unscored upon for the first 7 games. And so there's numerous records that are associated with this Lions defensive team. So to this, just to throw out a couple, if you look up defensive records for the NFL, the 1934 Lions are peppered through with all kinds of different records, like least amount of third quarter points and all kinds of weird little stuff like that. But some of the bigger ones is that so they had 7 straight shutouts. Okay. So I'm going to list you. There's only a handful of teams that have had shutouts, seven straight shutouts ever. You got the 1920 and 1921 Akron Pros. So the first, 1920-21, the first year of the NFL.
Right.
So 1920 Akron Pros had 5 straight shutouts. The 1921 Akron Pros had 8 shutouts. Okay. And then then you have the 1934 Lions when they first come out of the gate with 7 shutouts. And after that, there's not another team that has even anywhere near. The 1970 St. Louis Cardinals have 3.
Okay.
Nowhere near 7, obviously.
Yeah.
And then the 1976 Steelers have 3. So they're like to this day, like there's no. So technically, the 1921 Akron Pros have the most.
Right.
But not nobody since the 1934
They didn't know how to play yet.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to dismiss what they did in 1921 because anybody could apply the same logic to anything we talk about on this. Because they'll be like, 34, they didn't know nobody knew what they were doing. You know what I mean? They're still playing against competition that was at least in the par as them. You know what I mean? Right. So in their day, they're playing against competitors of their caliber. So, like I say, to dismiss them of that era based on us is allow everybody to dismiss our story as being like, oh, nobody cares. That was back in the day. So
I'm just mean though. So
yeah, you are. Yeah. So anyways, you've got you also to this day. The Lions have the record for the most consecutive games without allowing a touchdown. So that's 7. That's fact. All right, so that even eliminates the 1921 Akron. So most consecutive games without allowing a touchdown was 7. That's still the record. And so since 1935, the most games without allowing a touchdown is 5 with the 1976 Steelers, and the 2000 Steelers tied it. So nobody's even come close to that 7 games. You see, and then also the fewest amount of rushing touchdowns. In a season, and that with only two rushing touchdowns. They only give up 2 touchdowns on the ground
in the whole season,
the entire season.
Jeez.
Yeah, and that's tied with the 1968 Cowboys and the 1971 Vikings. So that's so that's actually so it's the fewest amount, and they're tied as like a 3-way tie. So that's those are just, and if you look it up, the defensive records, the NFL history, like you'll just see the 34 Lions are just peppered all the way through.
Right.
And you'll even see on offense, you'll see a couple other ones.
So still, even being that good,
it's incredible.
They're still like page 5 news though.
Yeah, they're like, well, yeah, actually, yeah, that's what I mean. Is like they're basically relegated. And I actually have a great quote to here too. Here's another great example of that concept. Is that this article comes from. I've actually met Chuck Bernard Jr., his son. Yeah, and I've also met the son of Abe Kushner, who is the guy who's the quote that we're going to. Abby Kushner was the equipment manager, and also
Bernard lived
doctor.
in Dearborn until he died, like in '62.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Detroit. But he only played in 1934. He only played in 34. Yeah, he didn't play with them in 35. He wasn't with the championship.
But he came back.
Yeah.
He lived here afterwards.
Yeah.
Must have loved the city.
Yeah, for sure. So, anyways, where's this quote here? Page 353 here. So Abby Kushner was the, basically, he was a trainer. He was a trainer and, equipment guy for the Lions. And so, anyways, this is a rare quote. You're not going to hear this anywhere else except for right here and in this book, because this was unpublished. This is unpublished recollections by Abby Kushner, because I met his son, and his son had this Lion's trunk, like a wooden his dad was very proud about being part of the Lions.
Oh my God.
About being the Lions at this time.
Yeah.
And he had a trunk full of all this stuff that he donated to the NFL museum. And so, like, I've got a picture of the trunk. I've got a picture of Abby. I've got so much stuff in here about Abby.
He let you go through it first?
No, he had already donated, but I did get a copy from the NFL. I did get a copy from the archives. He had just donated. Like, I just met him, and he's like, "Oh man, I wish I had met you a little bit earlier. I just donated this."
Because we'd have that.
We
set
would
up as
have
the bar over
probably
here.
give it to us. Yeah, like, who knows? But anyways, yeah. So his son was, his son is tremendous, and he was really cool, and he helped me. Because the NFL, when I tried to get because he had all those unpublished recollections, he had all these memories from the time.
Sure.
And so I tried to get a copy from the NFL, from their archives, and they're like, "Who are you? Where's your credentials? Which major media are you with?" And I'm like, "Dude, they just donated it like last week. Let me get a copy of the recollections."
Me, you, and him are the only people that know this exists.
Yeah, nobody knows about this. Who else is gonna do
And
anything
who's gonna
with
want
it?
it?
Yeah. So anyway, so through his son, through Abby's son, I was able to get a copy of those unpublished recollections, and that's where these come from. That's why you're not going to see them in any other book except for right here.
Wow.
So this is what we're talking about, the attendance of these Lions games.
Right.
And so here it is right here. So this is Abby Cushing right here. The smallest crowd to see a Lion home game was the second game played in Detroit in 1934. It was a Saturday night affair, which we won 6-0 in front of a crowd of 1,800 paying customers. There were more fans in the stands, but they came in on paper passes. Everything was tried to make the club look like it was catching on. Most folks know that the first 7 games we played were won by shutouts. Still, the crowds kept away in droves, and end zone seats went begging at 50 cents a ticket, which is like nothing. Even in back then, 50 cents is 50 cents.
Yeah.
Like it went. The end zone seats went begging at 50 cents a ticket.
Wow.
So they were trying to. If you look back at all the records for like how many fans were in these games, the numbers are like 9,000. 12,000, but the numbers were, you can even hear it out of his own words.
Yeah.
He's saying, everything was done to make it look like we were big, but we were nothing. We were small, And so, anyways, yeah, so that's the situation. They're doing phenomenally, but they're also doing it, at the same moment. Cause, as we mentioned in a previous episode, we spent an entire episode on that newspaper.
Right.
Their first game comes right when the Tigers are clinching the pennant.
Yeah.
And so they're like, you even showed in this. It's 2 days later. Lions win a new NFL team wins their first game. 2 days later, there's not even a mention.
Yeah.
They're
Not a follow up. Not looking
they're
at
like,
the next
we
game.
wrote about you yesterday.
That's all you get.
You got your little box score in the newspaper, but that's it. So, anyways, yeah. So, but nonetheless, the Lions are. The newly born 1934 Lions are kicking rear end, man.
Nice.
They're kicking rear end.
Perfect.
So I'll just go through kind of a little list, a couple of cool things. Here's another record. This is it. I had to write this down to make sure we mention this. Is that in the third game of the season, right after because Abby Kushner's talking about that second game. The third game of the season is on October 7th. Is on October 7th, and it's a 3-0 victory over the Packers. Okay. Now, that 3 points they scored in that game was a field goal kicked by Glenn Presnell, who've already been mentioned. But really, you call him the second best player in the Lions.
Okay.
And so, anyway, Glenn Presnell kicks a 54-yard field goal. Okay. Just to put into context how big that field goal was, that field goal stood as an NFL record until 1953.
Jeez.
That was the longest field goal in 1953.
How long was it?
It was a 54-yard field goal.
54 yard. Okay. 54 is still freaking impressive today.
Yes, it's a great distance. 54-yard kick. So he kicks to win a game 3-0 against the Packers. Okay, and so the Packers. They beat the Packers. That record stood till 1953. And I could try to pronounce his name, Burt Reichekar, 56 yards in 1953. But it stood as a Lions record until 1995.
Wow.
When Jason Hansen kicked a 56-yarder.
Right.
Yeah.
So it stood as an NFL record. I actually remember that time. I don't remember it because necessarily I was into this story at that time, but I remember when Jason Hansen broke that. And I remember thinking to myself,
that's a long record.
my God,
That's a long
it's been
record.
1934 since it was 60-something years since somebody kicked that field goal that big.
And who has the record now?
For the Lions?
Yeah.
Oh, well, what is it, Prater?
Prater has it. Yeah.
I'm
So
sure.
the Lions are really good at field goals.
Yeah,
Just
well,
saying.
they better be. They better be.
Yeah.
No, they've always seemed like they always have like the one thing they always seem to have, like Eddie Murray or anybody, or Jason Hansen, is they always have like an elite field goal kicker,
Right.
Or like an elite punter. Like
Yes, they do.
some guy that can just drop a ball in like the 1 inch line. Like
I wish they had signed Kickalicious. Just
I
saying.
do. Oh my God! You're speaking of the choir. You know who that is, Jamie? No. Kickalicious was a YouTube star that was like kicking balls with his heel, like drilling like 65-yard field goals,
and making it look like he was just. He was really good.
No, he was like from Sweden or something, and he was amazing. Just look at it when you go home later. Look up Kickalicious.
Okay,
and I'm telling you, when you watch him, you're like, oh my God, this guy's going to be the greatest NFL kicker of all time.
You get to your opponent's 45, 50.
Yeah,
just give it to him.
That's what I'm saying. Like he can like kick it. Like this guy is kicking field goals from like the highway over to the thing, and it's like hooking over into the
That's craziness.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, it was a great little interjection there. That Kickalicious, and they did sign him.
They did.
And I remember when they signed him, I was like, yes. This is like the best signing like we've ever had. Yeah, and then they caught him. He didn't even do it. He was in the Expedition, the spring, the preseason games.
Yeah.
But he never actually made it into a real game.
It's very different when you have nobody running up on you.
True, that's true. But you think that they could have done a little bit of development, or else some other team would have picked him up and really made something out of him.
Right.
But anyways, but the Lions have, literally always had great kickers. I mean, all the way back to 1934 when you got, Glenn Presnell booting a 54-yarder, to beat the Packers 3-0. So anyways, that's definitely worth a mention from this season. And then I also have another quote from Game 5. What time is that? I don't want to be running too late. Okay, so Game 5. So this is a great quote because this is a quote that has Mickey Cochran and JoJo White sitting in the crowd, and this is JoJo White from the Tigers talking about this team.
All right,
because he's seen it for
so
himself.
Mickey Cochran, Tigers
White,
taking a day off, heading over to
the season was over by this point. The World Series was over. Yeah, World Series. October 17th is when this quote comes.
All right.
So this is like I say, this is after their the World Series over, but they took a break to watch a game before they all went south to to their hometowns.
Yeah.
Anyway, but this is great because it really dives in. And we were talking about Potsy Clark, and I love this because it kind of gives it paints a nice verbal picture of this, of like the precision of this team. And so anyway, this quote comes for the Game 5 where the Lions beat the Boston Redskins 24-0. And so I'll just read it right ahead. So, JoJo White, Detroit Tigers center fielder, a little hollow-cheeked and peaked from having his tonsils jerked. I must mean he must have had his tonsillectomy or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. So JoJo White, a little hollow-cheeked and peaked from having his tonsils jerked, sat in the stands of University of Detroit Stadium and watched open-mouthed as the Detroit Lions shut out the Redskins. When it was all over, JoJo rolled his eyes and remarked admiringly, "Ain't nobody gonna get them Lions out. I've never seen such a football team. I've watched old Father Lumpkin tote a ball down in Georgia, but Lump just looks like one of the boys in there. I'm going down home to Georgia and get me some bird shooting. I don't want to see any more football games this season. I've done seen all there is. There ain't no more," which is just JoJo's quaint way of paying tribute to excellence. Mickey Cochran, manager of the Tigers, was there too, and he got as much of a bang out of the game as JoJo. And so the header for this little paragraph, Lions' 5th consecutive shutout victory. The Lions were about as near to perfection as it is possible for one team to appear in a competitive contest. It was the 5th consecutive game that they have played without having their goal line crossed. That not only is a record for the National Football League, but in this day of wide-open football, it can be cataloged as a miracle. Even Leo McDonald, who was an original Lion man, didn't think Potsy Clark's pack could keep the Redskins from scoring points. They not only kept the Reds from scoring, but kept them from having the ball long enough to count the laces. And the Redskins are not the kind of football team that is shoved around that way every night in the week. Not with the backs like Ernie Pinkert, Cliff Battles, and Doug Wyckoff operating behind one of the biggest and strongest lines in football. So next little passage here, Detroit, the last word in grid efficiency. The Lions have about all that any coach could ask for, including superb kicking, flawless blocking, fast and elusive ball carrying, speed and precision. Most of these Lions have played together for 3 to 4 years, and the finished product on U of D turf last night was just about the last word in gridiron efficiency. Once the Lions took the ball on their own 27-yard line and crossed the goal line in exactly a half dozen plays. On that march, they used about every sound offensive measure in the book, selected with judgment and executed with marvelous precision. And the final little passage here, snap and precision make Lions' perfect team. Clark is only one of a dozen similar stars what the Lions showed last night. Ernie Cadell, Glenn Presnell, Frank Christensen, and Lumpkin are backs to gladden the heart of any coach. And when you have them all on the same team and clicking like the Lions clicked last night, you are very near the perfect football team. The line functioned in a manner worthy of these great backs. There was a snap and precision to the things they did that one never sees on a college gridiron. Intercollegiate football may supply more glamour and excitement than the professional game, but for artistry and sheer competence, it will never equal the performance of a team like the Lions. As JoJo says, it is difficult to see how anyone is going to get them out.
So it
So
really
you can
kind
see
of
snap, precision, excellence. I mean, this is a great football team.
Yeah. Man. And it talks a little bit about college being a bit more popular
big time, yeah.
than the pros.
And he's actually talks about that in there where he's saying, the college game might be more popular in that,
Right.
but it's got nothing on this pro game.
Yeah.
Because when he's saying, like, when you have these guys who
Seasoned.
are all, seasoned, they're all former college stars, and to watch them operate the way that they do, I mean, he's like painting this picture. And that's the other cool thing is, do we have a picture? Do we have some of the older pictures from the old shows? But I had those old, show the one with the show the one with the numbers on it. Keep going up one. Down one picture from your finger. There you go. That one. So that right there is right out of Potsy Clark's book. He actually wrote a book on football.
Okay.
And so that's a diagram play of the single wing offense. And you can see in that picture, anybody that's not watching, unfortunately, might have to buy the book. But this is actually
Watch
out of
this
the
on YouTube.
this is out of the first. Yeah, watch that on YouTube. Yeah. This is out of the first book. And you can see the ball carrier going through the hole and how every player is just like, there's like, it's a sea, it's like the Red Sea parting, and there's a player coming out with a funnel to run through. So that was like that's the way that, like, the textbook way that play runs. Now flip to the next one, down one and over to the left. That one, there you go. That's what it looks like in the game.
Okay. Oh,
And
there
so
it is.
look
yeah.
at that. So you can see, this is like, this is an in-game photo of it. This is an old, this is taken off of a microfilm, so it's not the greatest image, but you can just see those players, all the machine-like precision of this team. That's a single wing offense in action. And so, look at, you can just see it with your own eyes, like the precision of that team. And so that was Potsy Clark football. Whereas the Bears were more of like a brutality type of a game. Yeah. And the Packers surprisingly were more of a passing team. Okay. Even though because they had, Arnie Herber and, they were Johnny Blood and some of these great Packers players. But they also had some great, running backs too. But anyways, they, like Clark Hinkle, like literally we could do an entire episode on Clark Hinkle for the Green Bay Packers. You're talking about one of the great all-time NFL studs that never gets mentioned. He's one of my favorite players.
Wow.
But anyways, he was a Packers running back, and but anyways, but you can see, like, this is parts of, the Packers were more of like a passing team, like more of a combination passing and running. The Bears were just brutality. Just pure brutality, and the Lions and the Portsmouth Spartans were precision.
Precision
was just discipline. He alludes in there that the Lions players were monsters. That that Father Lumpkin, who was their number one star, like one of their fan favorites. Well, Dutch Clark was their best player, but Father Lumpkin was their like fan favorite. Like, he was the most popular player on the team and all this. And so, anyways, he's like, Lumpkin just looks like one of the boys in there. Almost saying, because Lumpkin was a big guy. That's what he's saying. He's like, he just kind of blends in with the rest. But, like, that's not entirely true, because the Lions, like, some of the guys in, like, there's a guy named Ox Emerson for the Lions. He was their guard. And this guy's like, I'm bigger than him.
Yeah.
Like, I'm 5'11", take off a couple pounds on my way, like 210 or something. Like, this guy, this guy is and he plays right next to Tarzan Christensen, who's one of the biggest guys in the league. Yeah. So, you got like this, Mutt and Jeff type of thing, where one guy's small, one guy's huge, but but anyway, so, they had some smaller guys on this team. And so it was more about the precision, about everybody knowing exactly what they're going to do and operating at peak
It's not
efficiency.
the size that matters. It's how you use it.
Exactly. There you go, man.
Just making sure I got that.
You hit that right on the head there, bud. So anyways, so we can kind of zip through it because we got to run into
we got about 5-6 minutes.
Okay,
so hang in there, guys.
Yeah. So anyways, game 8 is when their streak is finally broken. Okay, and it's broken in the very first quarter on a 40-yard touchdown pass from Joe Skladany to Hart Vaughn. Okay, so it's in the first quarter. The they score the Pittsburgh Pirates scored a 40-yard touchdown pass. And what's interesting is, so I got a great friend of mine named Tom Urich, who I'd love to actually bring on the show at some point. And he's just an absolute, he recorded a series of interviews at the Lions Golden Huddle, which was the 50th anniversary of the Lions' first championship. So this is 1985 that he did his recordings.
Wow.
And so there was like 9 or 10 Lions players there. And so he recorded it. And so I've got the recordings.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I've got the recordings. Like maybe we could play some on here at some point.
I would
be cool.
I would love that.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool. I'll just get you a
We'll
copy.
bring
I'll
him
let you-
on and
but I mean, at the very least,
some...
we can give you a copy and then you listen to him. There's something you want to hear.
Yeah.
But anyways, so on those recordings, they were joking on there because they were talking about when Skladany threw that touchdown pass to Hart Vaughn and broke their string.
Oh.
And so they're all like, oh boy, did we show them? They're like, he's like, we put our feet on their throats for this game. They won this game. Indeed, the score plays out 40-7.
Oh,
That's the only
man.
touchdown they gave up. And they pounded them the rest of the game. He goes, they're actually on the tape saying, oh, man, we just hammered the Pittsburgh the rest of the day. He's like, we had no mercy on
We
these
gave
guys.
up one. That's it.
Yeah, like they were furious because they stopped their streak. So that streak comes to an end in game 8, but not without penalty to the Pirates for breaking it.
Wow.
Yep. And so anyway, so they keep on winning. They win game 9, 17-13 over the Chicago Cardinals. Game 10, they beat the St. Louis Gunners 40-7. And then here's where it all basically falls apart for the Lions. So at this point they're 10-0.
Right.
They won every game.
Going
right?
all the way.
And so now all of a sudden, though, this is what's interesting, is out of a sudden there's this idea that maybe Detroiters who have lost this heart-wrenching World Series in 1934, granted a month or so earlier.
Sure.
But that maybe there's like a consolation prize.
Hey.
The NFL
we'll win some
championship,
foosball.
right?
Yeah.
The NFL championship. Well, we'll take
take that.
the NFL championship. That's cool.
Sure.
So they start kind of getting interested in this a little bit.
Yeah.
And so the coverage actually, you can see it in the newspapers. It starts to ramp up a little bit, but all of a sudden the rug is pulled out from underneath them. The game 11, they lose 3-0 to the Packers, the team that they beat 3-0 earlier in the season.
Yeah.
Well, tit for tat at that
Yeah,
point.
But 3-0 is not like it's a
3-0.
blowout.
Yeah,
It was
exactly.
It was
That's
a
a bar-
battle. It was a
Yes,
battle.
That's a barn burner is what that is.
Yeah. So anyway, November 29th, so just 3 days later is the first Thanksgiving game.
Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Was that against the Bears?
Against the Bears, and
The
they
Bears.
lose 16-19 by 3 points to the Bears. So they lose the first Thanksgiving game. And the Thanksgiving game, and this is worth a little aside, is that the Thanksgiving game was the genesis of, the brainchild of George Richards,
Right.
with WJR Radio, who had, connects all through the industry. And this is the first NFL pro football game broadcast coast to coast. And so he sets up this syndicate across the country. And this first Thanksgiving game is broadcast across the country. That's what I mean. Like the Lions still playing the Thanksgiving today. And you know what I mean? Like, you talk about an origin story. 1934 is the first Thanksgiving game, and the Lions win. Or I'm sorry, they get beat. That's what. Pull the rug from the field as a do, 'cause
And
they get
still,
beat.
no turducken.
No turducken back then. I think that was an
turducken.
evolution. At least I didn't see evidence of it. Maybe it was. I don't know. And then game 13. So they lose against the Bears in game 12 against Thanksgiving. But that loss eliminates them from any championship.
That's great. Oh, my
Only
gosh.
2 losses. They're eliminated from the championship consideration. And then the final game against the Bears, they lose against the Bears again, 7-10.
Wow.
They had not beaten
3
the Bears.
points.
Going into after these 2 losses to the Bears, that made it so that the Lions had not beaten the Bears since that franchise, it was the Spartans. The Spartans and the Lions combined had not beaten the Bears since 1931.
And this is all
Years.
happening in 1934.
The 34, yeah. So now their streak of losses to the Bears is extended. Now they haven't beat them since 1931. They lost the 1932 NFL championship game to the Bears. The Bears are now they've just beat them on the first Thanksgiving game to eliminate them, and they, to rub salt into a wound, they beat them in the final game of the season too. You see what I'm saying? So so anybody that's a Lions fan, a newly burgeoning Lions fan's going, what the hell happened? We were doing
You're
so
winning,
well.
yeah.
But now they're awakened to this idea of the rivalry, of the rivalry with the Packers, of the rivalry with the Bears, because they just pulled the rug out from underneath them, and they're going, where do these two teams, they're going, well, the Lions are good. They're real good. But they still haven't got past these 2 Packers and Bears. This is what they have to overcome, these 2 teams. So this sets the stage for them. in 1935.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
So this is, so like this is the. Do we have time for one picture?
Sure. Yeah.
Throw this up there real quick. We can even start out with the next week, but otherwise, actually, the picture with Dutch Clark, the big headshot.
Oh, this one.
Okay.
Yeah, we had him up
That's
earlier.
Dutch.
Yeah.
So that right there is one of the most iconic photos in NFL history.
Yeah.
And you can see why.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at I'm sorry for any of the viewers at home that are listening, but if you Google the American football player, you'll be able to see what we're talking about. Dutch Clark, the title, the photo was so iconic that it was given a name, and it was called the American football player. And it captures Dutch Clark in sort of a Roman gladiator type of almost like a Roman gladiator look.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it is just the perfect, and they actually say it in this, that photo that's on our screen is taken out of a Time Life magazine from, what's the date I got on here for that? That came out. So it first appeared in the Detroit News, the Detroit News in 1934. I forgot what day that was, but where's the date for the? Oh, I put it on the bottom of the picture. Let me see. What is it? The person at home can see it better than I can. It's on the screen. The
34.
Date, 34, but it's
12/28/34.
12/20. Yeah, okay. So that was a Time Life magazine. So right after Christmas, 1934, that photo was seen across the country by in the Time Life magazine. And so it says in the photo, the perfect football face. And so that photo right there, as we were already talking about, bringing the Dutch Clark was their Ty Cobb of football. And so this photo is seen by a nation of readers who they probably are looking at football as a second or third, class sport as well. And now they all hear that there's a team called the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, right.
You see what I'm saying? So the brand, just that, this image was massively responsible for beginning this brand. Is like any NFL team that continues here is going to forever be the Lions.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's establishing this national presence. Just a simple photo, and I've always loved that. And it's a great. We can finish this episode with this last little quote because it's a quote by Dutch Clark, where he talks about this photo of him getting his picture taken in this. Yeah, so this is actually page 405 here. For those of you reading along at home, page 405.
Turn to page 405. Well, you got it nice and blown up in the book, too.
Yeah. This is a full page. Oh, it is, yeah. And the photo's done by a guy named William Kunzel.
Okay.
And I've got an entire section in the book about William Kunzel photos. Some of the most iconic photos in Detroit sports history are taken. Like, there's a picture of Ty Cobb sliding into third base. That is William Kunzel. Like pretty much any early 1900s iconic photo of Detroit sports that you see in like every book.
Kunzel guy.
That was Kunzel that did it.
Right.
He was that good. He was an incredible photographer. So anyways, so here's the quote. This is by Dutch Clark. It comes out of a book.
They throw him back up there.
Yeah.
Yep. It comes out of a book called Old Leather, and written by Chris Willis. And so this is Dutch Clark's own words. I was treated well by the Detroit fans and press. Once during practice, we had a photographer named Bill Kunzel from the Detroit News come out. He was taking photos for a story. Well, he took a photo of me from the side, a profile shot. I was just kneeling on the sideline watching our defense run a few drills. Bill just snapped it. It turned out wonderful. It was in the photo section, and the newspaper got a ton of requests for the photo. It then appeared in Life magazine. I don't know whether he thought I was photogenic or what. He came out again and must have snapped 100 more, but he never had a good one like that first one. It was just something that happened.
Oh, wow.
It was just that, like, he took 100 more, and there's so many I've actually
nearly
got.
Candid, so that's not really posed.
It was just one of those photos. It's kind of like the flag, like the Iwo Jima photo, where they took that picture of the flag going up, and it just captured the nation. Like, I wouldn't say this was anywhere near that iconic.
Yeah.
But this photo, when you see this, like, I mean, you can just see
captures the time. It captures the game.
You can see, like, that photo. Like, I've done a lot of, like, graphic stuff with that. In fact, I use it for the cover of the screen, one of the episodes of the screenplay. You just can't help. But it is an unbelievable photo. I mean, it like captures an era. You know what I mean? Like that guy. I mean, he looks like a Roman gladiator with a football helmet.
He really does.
So, I mean, like I say, that photo did a great deal to spread the brand of the Detroit Lions.
So that story and a lot more, that photo and a lot more, all inside the trilogy of books, Detroit City of Champions, and the website is also
DetroitCityOfChampions.com.
So, Jamie and Charles, Matt Fox, we are pleased you spent some time with us for these stories. We'll be back with another one next time. So, until then, be well.
Cheers.
Have a great night, guys.